Hello everybody, we're back at the South Central Regional Library in the Collider space with our April artist, Tim Robertson. Today he's going to talk about pigment transfers.
Hi, I'm Tim, and I'm going to show you how to begin the pigment transfer process. The process includes a long drying time, and so you need to do these steps before you're ready for the final process, which I'll cover in my Zoom workshop later. The pigment transfer process generally is the process of taking this and putting it onto this to look something like this. When you're choosing your image, it doesn't have to be a photograph. It can be a drawing, it can be a design, it can be some smears of paint, but you need to print it out as an inkjet or a laser jet print. So I have a couple of laser jet and inkjet prints here that I'll be transferring to these surfaces. But first I want to talk to you about materials that you'll need. You need a surface material or substrate. You can use wood, like these pieces are wood, but you also can use paper. You can use a lot of different materials as long as it's something that acrylic can bond to. And you can prepare your backgrounds in the way that makes sense for the artwork you have in mind. So this one was just spray painted silver before I transferred it. This one, I didn't do very much to it all. I just found the piece of wood and I coated it. For the ones that I'm working on, I have one that I have some mixed media, some gold foil and gold leaf and paint layers, and then these are here's one that's just gold leaf, and this one is aluminum leaf, and so those are how I've prepared my substrates. But you'll want to do that ahead of time and have those ready and plan out your work. You need your inkjet or laser jet print. You need, for this process, acrylic gel medium. This is a matte acrylic gel medium. You can use a glossy one. It'll be a little bit more shiny, but it'll also be a little bit more transparent. And so there's some strengths and weaknesses either way. I use kind of a medium weight acrylic gel because it builds up a thick enough layer. But you can play with that and decide what you prefer. Brushes, obviously, to spread the acrylic gel. I use a squeegee for, you'll see several parts of the steps, but I find it to be a really handy tool in a lot of the work that I do. Later on, you'll need a scrub brush, a rag, some water, and then also this is a medium gloss acrylic. It's kind of a little bit shinier, a little bit thinner, and I like to use it as a final protective coat when I finish my pieces. It's optional, but I just like the way it looks better when it has that. So when you're thinking about your piece, there's a little bit of imagination that has to happen first. So with my image here, I had to think about, well, what parts of the image do I want? And I put my photograph into Photoshop, and I realized that, well, anywhere that there's white, anywhere that there's paper, that's going to be gone. That negative space is not going to be there. So whatever the background I'm transferring it to, that's where those things are really going to show through. So I increased the contrast of my image so that those places were delineated a little bit better. It got rid of some of the faintly shaded areas and created more of a black and white. It's okay to have some midtones as well. And then I thought about like what I wanted to transfer it to, and as you can see on this piece right here, I had some gold leaf and I had some mixed media, and I felt like, oh, that kind of can look like a horizon or a ground. And so you kind of want to imagine where your piece is going to fit, where your image is going to fit. And then you size that image in Photoshop or whatever you're using to print, and you print it out at the right size so that the elements of it kind of fit into the area you want the image to be on your surface. The other thing to remember when printing is you need to flip your image horizontal. This isn't crucial, like with this or with the cloud. You really can't tell forward or backward. But if your image contains letters or numbers or something that's very clearly going to be seen as like going the wrong direction, then you need to remember to flip it backwards, because when we transfer face down. So we're actually going to be seeing the reverse, the opposite side. You want to think about your background. Is it going to distract from the image that I'm putting on there, or is it going to add to it? Is it going to be something that seems natural or seems unnatural in a really interesting way? Again, there's always mystery, so don't get too worried about it, but it's good to think through your piece and try to imagine what it will look like and think about what you need to do to get there. Which parts will show of the background, what's going to show through and what's going to be covered by the ink that I'm covering it up with. Now, you can use color, you can use black and white, it doesn't matter, but it will make very different images. A color image has a lot more ink on it generally than this black and white image, and so there'll be more background showing through this one than there will be through this one. So before you get started, you kind of want to set up your workspace. For this, since I was going to be moving here, I made mobile workspaces. So I cut out cardboard that I could tape down my paper to, my images to. You do that because you want to hold the images still. Also, when you coat the acrylic onto the pieces, often they will wrinkle a little bit as they're getting wet and drying because they're expanding and contracting. And so this kind of just holds them still and doesn't let them get too wrinkled. And then I use just masking tape because it's easy. It comes up, it comes off very easily. I often work on larger sheets of paper where I'm doing multiple pieces on one sheet, and the tape helps me line up exactly the spaces for each piece. So this piece will go here, and this piece will go here, and I don't have to guess. And when I'm ready to put my final piece down, it gives me good lines for kind of lining it up without making a big mess. You really kind of want to avoid getting any acrylic on the back side of your print, because you want that to go away, and so it just makes it harder to get the paper off later on. And you'll see during the Zoom workshop that part of the process can get tricky if you have something stopping you. Once you've selected your image and you've prepared your surfaces so that they're like this, then you need to build up 3 layers of the acrylic gel medium on each surface and on each image. Matte gel that I'm going to use for this transfer, and I'm going to start by putting the first layer on the image that I'm going to actually be transferring. So this is the inkjet image that I've printed out, and you can see I've got a brush, and I'm just going to coat this entire print with this. And since we're going to be doing 3 layers of this, you don't have to be too perfect, but you kind of want to get it even so that it's a pretty consistent coat all the way through. One of the ways that you can alter the way your final transfer will come out is by how thorough you are on applying these acrylic layers. If you apply them very quickly and skip spots, then you will have more holes and tears in your final image and make it look much more rough. Or if you coat it very thoroughly and don't have many spots missed, then it will be much more complete and clean looking. So you can really play with that and alter how you end up transferring your images. And I'm going to coat this entire thing once and then let it dry completely, which can take a few hours before I put another coat on. Okay, cool. So after each layer dries, you do a second layer. I like to alternate brushing vertically and horizontally. I do 3 layers on each because for these I want them to be very solid images. But if you want your image to be more rough, a little bit more weathered or distressed, then you can do fewer layers of the acrylic and it'll create holes in your image often, or places where it's kind of been scratched away. And sometimes you can create some really neat looking things that way. But if you want to kind of get a really pretty solid image, and then 3 layers is kind of my go-to for that. So each of these have been coated with 3 layers of the acrylic, and also each of these surfaces have been coated with three layers of the acrylic. Now I'm going to show you what you do next, the actual process of transferring your image. So once you have 3 layers on each, there's a final wet layer that you're going to apply to your surface. You don't need to apply it to the image, but only to the surface. And you try to get it nice and even, not too thick and not too thin, is what I would say. You should be able to see that the gel is on there. Again, you got to think about not missing any spots unless you want your image to be more distressed or weathered. If you are okay with having large parts of it or small parts of it kind of tear away instead of be transferred, then you can leave more spots, and you can do this more quickly and less thoroughly. And that way you kind of add a bit of chance. You can also choose a section that you don't want to transfer and just not put any gel on that part, and it will not transfer. Once you've done that, then it's time to place your image. This is kind of a key part. You have to line your image up where you want it. That's why I use tape. It just gives me a good border to know where I want my image to be. This one I've cut down to make sure that it fits exactly on the spot that I need it. And then what I use is the squeegee to smooth it out. You want to hold it still and flat on there, and then press any extra medium or air bubbles out. This usually takes a couple of goes, a couple of times trying to make sure you get it all out. But I go in different directions out from the center to just push all the air from the center of the image all the way to the outside edges where it can be released. And again, the bubbles are what will cause tears in your image. So the more you do this, the better a job you do of this, the more intact your image will be, and the less chance there will be of there being holes and damages on your image. With smaller images, this is easier, and so I usually recommend people start with a smaller image for their first try. There's kind of a trade-off with a smaller image. If there's a small hole in it, it makes a bigger difference to the image as a whole. With a larger image, if there's a small hole, it's not really noticeable, or it just adds texture. So those are things to consider as well. But like an 8 by 10 or something like that is a really good size to start with. It can give you some familiarity with the process. Okay, so once you have all the air bubbles out of it, you need to leave this for at least 24 hours. It needs to dry so that the ink on the print can bond to the acrylic underneath. So you leave it on there for 24 hours at least. You can leave it on for longer. I've put pieces down and waited a couple weeks before I've actually finished them. It's just a matter of it just needs at least that much time to bond. So for the workshop, feel free to make a piece on a wood panel or on paper or on another piece of material if you're feeling adventurous, and make a collage. Use some metallic leaf or paint or whatever is interesting to you. And I hope you'll join me for the Zoom workshop. You can see info below for that. Thanks.